there, this is the Sherlock Brew Podcast series brought to you by Sherlock Supercoach AI. On the show, you'll find actionable insights and bite-sized conversations with HR and business leaders on topics that provoke thoughts and new paradigms to better understand and develop Gen Z and young millennials on your team. We'll help you look at new possibilities and gain perspectives to level up young professionals and help them surge ahead on your team. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper, even if there isn't a clear answer, that's absolutely okay. The follow-up question we're just thinking about in terms of the well-being of an employee, are there any unconventional methods that we have witnessed so we can reflect upon? And also there's a difficulty of, as you mentioned earlier, not everyone is in person. There's a hybrid workplace. Sometimes companies are entirely virtual at the moment. So I want to just maybe reflect or surface something that I've seen 10 years ago when at Arnold, a Boston-based advertising firm, hired this gentleman, Jordan Clayton. So he was leading the UX team full of designers. And literally within the first week, he organized this field trip. We were all so shocked. He was taking them to the Boston Public Library. It was really close. It was such a no-brainer, first of all. And he was telling stories. And I remember witnessing the team of 7 or 8 people at the beginning. They were a little uncomfortable. They're like, we haven't done this. We have work to do. By the time they came back after just a couple of hours during lunch break, their eyes lit up and they start talking to each other, talking to this new guy who was like so new. And it just, that was just something that reminded me of this very unconventional approach. And this thing, just their reflections about this trip went on probably for months, frankly, and they had to do it again and find a different place. So anyways, what are some of the unconventional methods perhaps you have seen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to be a little bit more geeky about this. I mean, there's obviously like what you're describing is, it's how do you actually like create memorable experiences to kind of reinforce learning or reinforce like a goal. I'll take a very different angle from this. We're in an age where there's just immense amount of data because you mentioned it, we're basically all digital for most part, virtual. There's a lot of data, and you think of even some of the data that like Sherlock AI captures, like you're able now to potentially assess how someone's engagement and sentiment changes through time and even potentially on a day-to-day basis, which could actually then eventually lead to AI predicting kind of what that person's sentiment is. And so when you think about some of the tools that I think that will come out there, it's like, I think it'll be like you're a manager and going back to that tool belt, it's like, hey, you're probably going to eventually get a pop up that says, hey, Steve, his behavior the last few days have been up and down. We anticipate that there's a lot of stress going on. It may be a good proactive, time to reach out to him and just schedule like an ad hoc type of touch base just to like check in on Steve. And it does that in anticipation of sentiment continuing to drop versus just reacting to the current or historical sentiment. And I think those are some of the, I'll call it non-traditional things that's going to start to happen. And organizations already are doing this. There's tools out there. I mean, obviously Sherlock AI is a tool like that, but like there's other tools out there that allow a manager to kind of be more on top of it without having to truly invest the time in himself to kind of like analyze the different cues or data points that may surface on their particular employee.
This is really interesting segment that we're getting into. And I have a follow-up question related to kind of transparency of people who are adopting a tool like an AI coaching app, for instance, and worried about entering too much personal information or things that might hurt them, their careers, their promotions later on, or they worry about what I'm typing, what I'm engaging with. Is it a true reflection, accurate reflections of how I'm feeling, how I'm doing, or we're having to deal with HR. So what are your take on that in terms of data transparency, privacy issues for HR managers and employees?
Yeah, I mean, I think first off, you have to be very clear and not just like when you roll out the tool of what level of transparency, what level of privacy is to be expected. And I think that has to be a center of the change management campaign. Because you may say that, hey, like everything you use is subject for HR review or management review. That will probably impact engagement and adoption. But like you're being very transparent that way. It doesn't come up as something that is surprising in the future. At the end of the day, like any tool you have can be misused by the organization. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, sometimes it's a little bit, you have to kind of understand what the organization is going to do with what you're telling it What do you perceive it do from others? Like what are the water cooler conversations that are happening based on people engaging this tool? If the organization is using the data in the way they set the expectations with the employees and actually showing the employees that, hey, here's what we're doing differently. Here's the things that decisions have been driven by this. And then it could be great if the organization is not doing a good job of one, adhering to the expectations they set, or it kind of goes into like a black hole and you don't really understand what the organization is doing with the data, how it's impacting decisions, so forth. And then that's going to like obviously impact, the engagement down the road. And so it's less about the technology tool itself. It really comes down to like, how's the organization following through on its promises and providing transparency on kind of the benefit of the tool, not just on the employee specific level, but at an organizational level.
Absolutely agree with that. I think it's a difficult question for sure. And I see the benefits to both the data being available. So like you said, someone can just reach out just in time. And there are also benefits of people who are more hesitant in terms of adoption and then letting them know the reality is there's going to be no human in the loop. You are on your own, but the app is developed to learn more about you to be as helpful as possible. So I'm so intrigued to see, people are going to comment on this and what their thoughts are. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you find it helpful. We'll soon be back with our next podcast. In the meantime, please share this episode with your friends and colleagues.